The morning light slid across the polished stone of the lobby in clean, deliberate lines, turning the marble floors into something cold and immaculate. The building did not announce itself. There were no signs, no logos, no guards standing openly with weapons. To the outside world, it was just another luxury property rising quietly above the city. Offices, private investment suites, legal firms that dealt in numbers too large to feel real. But everyone who worked inside knew the truth, even if they never said it aloud. This was the front, the place where power wore a tailored suit and spoke softly instead of drawing blood. She walked in like she always did, steady steps, head high, shoulders relaxed. Her heels made no sound loud enough to echo. She had learned long ago how to move through dangerous spaces without drawing attention. Her hair was pulled to one side today, a practical choice, she told herself, nothing more. She was already thinking about schedules, deliveries, the meeting that would start precisely on time because it always did. She believed she was in control of her morning. She was wrong. The elevator ride up was smooth, silent. When the doors opened, the air changed. It always did on this floor. It felt heavier, charged, like the building itself was holding its breath. She stepped out and nodded to the men stationed discreetly near the walls. They acknowledged her with respect. She had earned that. She was not just staff. She was trusted. Loyal. She knew when not to ask questions and when to speak without fear. Inside the inner office, he stood near the window, hands clasped behind his back, looking down at the city as if it were a chessboard laid out for his consideration. He was calm in a way that unsettled people. Not loud. Not dramatic. The kind of man whose silence ended arguments faster than shouting ever could. He had built his empire by being patient, by knowing when to wait and when to strike. Men feared him not because he was cruel, but because he was controlled. She did not notice his eyes move the moment she entered. Did not see the way his gaze, sharp and assessing, swept over her out of habit. She was used to that. Everyone was measured in his presence. What she did not expect was the sudden stillness that followed. His eyes stopped. Just for a second. That was all it took. There, just below the line of her jaw, partially hidden by the fall of her hair, was a faint mark. Not dramatic, not fresh enough to scream violence, but unmistakable. Skin slightly darkened, bruised in a way that did not belong to accidents or carelessness. It was the kind of mark men left when they believed they were entitled to do so. The world did not explode. Nothing shattered. No one raised their voice. But inside him, something cracked. His breathing did not change. His posture remained perfect. The men watching from the edges of the room saw nothing out of the ordinary. If they had looked closer, they might have noticed the tightening of his jaw, the way his fingers curled slightly, nails pressing into his own skin as if to anchor himself. She spoke, calm and professional, greeting him the way she always did. Her voice was steady. Her eyes did not waver. She had no idea that in that moment, every instinct he had spent years mastering was screaming at him. Territory, threat, loss. Who did this? He said nothing. Silence stretched, thick and deliberate. It was not the silence of hesitation. It was the silence of calculation. He forced his gaze away from her neck, met her eyes instead. She saw nothing there that alarmed her, just the same composed authority she had always known. That was his greatest weapon. No one ever knew what he was thinking until it was too late. Inside, names were already lining up in his mind. Men who worked too close, men who looked too long, men who might have mistaken his restraint for weakness. His control was the only thing keeping blood off the floor. She shifted slightly, unaware of the line she had crossed just by existing with that mark visible. She had survived her past by keeping parts of herself sealed away. Emotion locked down, history buried, loyalty given, but never vulnerability. She did not realize that her careful distance was unraveling him faster than any enemy ever had. He finally spoke, his voice even almost gentle. Business, routine, orders delivered calmly as if nothing had changed. But the room felt different now, charged, dangerous. The men around them felt it too. The quiet was wrong, too tight, too controlled. Because anger could be anticipated, violence could be prepared for. But silence like this meant someone was already condemned. And she walked away from that morning, believing it was just another day, unaware that with one unnoticed mark, she had shifted the balance of an empire and awakened a jealousy that would not rest until it knew the truth. The city did not know what had shifted that morning, but it felt it anyway. Power moved when he moved, and when his thoughts darkened, the streets listened. He did not call for anyone. He did not raise his voice. He did not demand answers. That was what frightened his men. From the outside, he remained the same calm presence, standing near the window watching traffic slide below like obedient lines of fate. Inside his chest, something ancient and violent had awakened. Not rage yet. Something colder. More focused. Jealousy was too small a word for it. This was possession colliding with fear. Fear that someone had crossed into a space that had quietly belonged to him long before he admitted it to himself. He replayed the image again and again. The curve of her neck. The faint shadow against her skin. The way she stood unaware. Unapologetic. Unclaimed. He had built his empire by noticing details others missed. A hesitation in a handshake. A pause in a voice. A mark that was never accidental. Men did not leave marks unless they wanted to be remembered. That was the thought that tightened his control. That was the thought that kept him silent. He turned away from the window and began to walk. Not pacing. He never paced. Each step measured. Intentional. The building moved with him. Doors opened quietly. Phones stopped ringing. Men straightened without knowing why. He passed through rooms where plans were made and lives were decided. No one stopped him. No one dared. In a private corridor, he paused and spoke a single name. Low. Even. Within minutes, shadows began to move. Not soldiers. Observers. He did not want noise. He wanted truth. Backgrounds were pulled. Names were cross-checked. Any man who had been close enough to breathe her air in the last week was remembered. He refused to imagine her hurt. Refused to imagine her touched without consent. Yet the image burned behind his eyes. He remembered other women from other times. The ones who had not been protected quickly enough. The ones whose silence had arrived too late. He had sworn never again. Sworn that anyone under his roof would never be used as leverage. Never marked. Never broken. She was under his roof, whether she knew it or not. When she passed him later that day, she felt it. The chain. The way the air tightened around him. He did not look at her neck again. That restraint cost him more than blood ever had. She spoke about schedules and deliveries. Her voice steady. Professional. Guarded. He listened. Every word. Every breath. He noticed how she never flinched. Never softened. Never leaned in. A woman who survived by control. Just like him. That realization unsettled him more than the mark. He dismissed her with a nod. No warmth. No coldness. When she left the room, he finally allowed his hand to close into a fist. Not because he wanted to hurt someone, but because he was afraid of what he might do if the truth confirmed his worst fear. By nightfall, whispers reached rival. Not from him. Never from him. But power has a scent, and others could smell it. Something was wrong inside the empire. And predators always noticed weakness. He stood alone again at the window, as darkness swallowed the city. His reflection staring back at him like a stranger. He had always believed obsession was a weakness. A flaw that got men killed. Now he understood the truth. Obsession was not dangerous. Uncontrolled obsession was. And if someone had placed their hands on her without permission, if someone believed she was unprotected, he would correct that misunderstanding quietly. Completely. Tomorrow he would ask. Not as a boss. Not as a king. But as a man who needed to know. And when he did, there would be no turning back. She sensed it before he spoke. Not fear. Not danger. Something heavier. Like being seen too clearly. The room was quieter than usual when he called her in. No background movement. No voices beyond the walls. He stood behind the desk this time, instead of near the window. That alone was a warning. She closed the door carefully. Her posture straight. Her expression neutral. She had learned that survival in his world depended on never appearing weak. He did not invite her to sit. That silence stretched. Not awkward. Not uncertain. Intentional. His eyes moved to her face. Then down. Then stopped. The mark. He did not look away this time. She felt it like a touch. A slow burn against her skin. Who did this to you? The words were calm. Flat. Not a question. Her heartbeat changed rhythm, but her face did not. She had buried worse truths than this. She had survived silence before. It is nothing, she said. Just an accident. He stepped closer. Not fast. Not threatening. Controlled. Accidents do not leave marks like that. The air tightened. Even the walls seemed to listen. She lifted her chin. You did not call me here to discuss my body. A flicker crossed his face. Not anger. Relief. That she would challenge him. You are under my protection, he said quietly. Anyone who touches you answers to me. Her eyes met his. Sharp. Unyielding. I belong to myself. For a moment, the world held its breath. Then something unexpected happened. He nodded. That single gesture carried more power than violence ever could. Acknowledgement. Respect. Tell me anyway, he said. Not as an order. As a request. She hesitated. Not because she was afraid of him, but because telling the truth meant opening a door she had sealed long ago. No one hurt me, she said. Not recently. That last word echoed in his mind. He stepped back. Gave her space. If someone ever does. You come to me. There was no threat in his voice. Only certainty. She studied him. The calm. The restraint. The man choosing control when everything in him demanded action. She realized then that this was not about jealousy. Not entirely. This was about fear. Fear of failing again. Fear of being too late. She nodded once. I will. When she left the room, he remained standing where she had been. Her presence still lingering. His men would have expected orders. Violence. Movement. They got nothing. Instead, he dismissed everyone for the day. Alone, he allowed the truth to surface. That the thought of another man leaving marks on her did not anger him. It terrified him. Because if someone else had reached her, then she had been alone in a way he had sworn no one under his watch would ever be again. That night he did not sleep. He stood at the window as the city breathed below. Watching. Waiting. Tomorrow he would learn more. Quietly. And whoever had believed she was unprotected had made the last mistake of their life. The city responded before she understood why. When power shifted at the top, it always did. Doors that had once felt invisible began to open too easily. Eyes lingered longer. Silence followed her steps. She felt watched. Not in the crude, obvious way of fear, but in the careful, measured way of men who were deciding something. He never said a word to her about it. That was the worst part. Protection arrived quietly. A car that waited too long at the curb. A man who stood a little too close, but never spoke. Routes that changed without explanation. She noticed everything. She always had. He had not given orders in anger. He had given permission. And that permission traveled faster than violence ever could. In rooms she was not meant to hear. Names were spoken. Questions asked without voices being raised. Who had access? Who had looked too long? who believed she was unguarded. Rivals sensed it too. They always did. When a man like him became still, it meant something sharp was coming. Something final. A whisper moved through the underground. The boss had noticed something. The boss was unsettled. That was dangerous information. By afternoon, a message reached him. Not a threat. An invitation. A rival family wanted to talk. Sudden interest. Perfect timing. He declined. Silently. That refusal said more than a meeting ever could. She crossed the floor carrying documents she no longer read. Her instincts humming low and tight. She felt the air change when he entered a room, even when she did not see him. Once their eyes met across a distance. Just a second. In that second she saw it. Not anger. Not hunger. Fear restrained by iron control. It unsettled her more than rage ever could. Later that day, a man brushed past her shoulder. Too close. Too casual. Before she could turn, the hallway shifted. The man was gone. Removed without a sound. No one explained. No one needed to. That night she went home and locked the door. She pressed her back against it and exhaled slowly. She had survived worse. But never with this many unseen hands moving around her. Across the city, he stood in a private room, surrounded by men who would kill for him without hesitation. He did not raise his voice. He did not issue commands. He asked questions. The most dangerous thing he could do. When answers came, they did not please him. Rumors had grown legs. The mark had become a story. The story had become justification. Someone believed she could be touched. Someone believed she could be used. That was unacceptable. He dismissed the room one by one until he stood alone. For the first time, he admitted the truth to himself. This was no longer about authority, or protection, or territory. This was about her choosing to stay in his world without knowing the cost. And him deciding whether he would become the man who caged her, or the man who kept her safe without asking for ownership. That choice would define everything that came next. Outside, the city waited. Quiet. Watching. And somewhere in the dark, someone believed they had time. They were wrong. She met her in the place power, liked to pretend it was harmless. Soft light. Crystal glasses. Men who smiled while counting leverage. The woman arrived without announcement. Confidence wrapped in silk. Eyes sharp enough to cut through lies. Everyone knew her name. No one said it aloud. She belonged to a family that did not ask. They took. They remembered. She approached slowly. Like a warning disguised as elegance. So you are her. The one who changed the atmosphere. The words were smooth. Not kind. She kept her spine straight. Her voice calm. I am not sure who you think I am. A smile curved. Knowing. Cruel. Of course you are. The mark made that very clear. Her fingers tightened around the glass. She did not flinch. You should be careful talking about things you do not understand. The woman laughed softly. I understand men like him very well. I was supposed to be his future once. That landed exactly where it was meant to. She felt the echo of truth in it. Not jealousy. History. He entered the room then. The temperature shifted immediately. Conversations lowered. Eyes turned away. His gaze found her first. Always her. Then it moved. And stopped. The woman inclined her head. Possession disguised as familiarity. You did not tell me you had company like this, she said. He did not touch her. Did not smile. That is because I did not invite you. Silence spread outward. The woman studied him. Then her eyes returned to the mark on her neck. Still there. Still unanswered. A shame. She said softly. Marks like that tend to start wars. His voice dropped. Low. Even. Be careful. She laughed again. Unmoved. You have always been too controlled. That is why men mistake your silence for permission. He stepped closer to her. Just enough. There is no permission. The words ended the room. She felt it then. The line drawn. Not for power. For her. Later when the woman was gone. Removed without force. Without scene. She stood alone near the balcony doors. He joined her. Not close. Are you all right? The question stunned her. No command. No demand. I am, she said. He hesitated. Then spoke. She was lying. Not about history. About ownership. She believes you are Leverett. Her jaw tightened. I am not yours to defend. A pause. I know. That is why I will. She turned to face him. Something fragile breaking through her control. Why? His answer was immediate. Because if this world touches you, it will answer to me. That night, she understood something terrifying. The mark on her neck had not only drawn attention, it had drawn a line. And the man standing beside her, feared by cities, feared by bloodlines, had chosen which side of that line he would stand on, whether she asked him to or not. The danger did not announce itself. It never did. It arrived as absence. The car that usually waited was gone. The familiar man at the corner did not appear. The street felt wider. Too open. She noticed immediately. Her instincts tightened. The kind born from nights where survival depended on noticing what others ignored. She did not call him. She did not panic. She adjusted her pace. Changed direction. Watched reflections instead of faces. Behind her, the city breathed like nothing was wrong. That was the problem. Across town he felt it. Not as information. As instinct. Something had slipped past the perimeter. He did not shout. Did not demand explanations. He moved. Men followed without being summoned. Vehicles shifted. Signals passed without sound. When the threat revealed itself, it was almost too late. A car slowing where it should not. A door opening too casually. A man stepping out with the wrong kind of calm. She reacted before fear could reach her chest. Turned. Moved. Ran. The shot missed by inches. The sound cracked the street open. She fell behind concrete. Breathing hard. Alive. The man never reached her. He was already gone. Removed. Silenced. She never saw how. When he reached her, she was shaking. Not crying. Not broken. Furious. You said I was safe. His face was carved from stone. Eyes dark. Focused. You are alive. That was his only answer. Later, when the city settled, and the danger was folded back into shadows, they stood alone. You should leave this place, he said. She looked at him. Really looked. And understood the cost behind the words. If I leave, you win. If I stay, you lose. A muscle in his jaw tightened. This is not a game. No, she said. It is a choice. For the first time, she saw him falter. Not in strength. In restraint. He had ruled by force. By fear. By precision. But this required permission. If you stay, he said slowly. I cannot promise safety without control. She stepped closer. Then do not control me. Silence. Men like him did not surrender control. They redirected it. You would be a target. I already am. You would be watched. I already am. You could be used. Only if I let them. Her voice did not shake. Something in him shifted then. A line crossed inward. "Stay," he said. Not a command. An invitation. "I will stay," she answered. "Not because of you, but because I choose to." That was the moment. Not when danger came. Not when blood nearly spilled. But when she stayed without being asked. He had protected many things. Territory. Power. Legacy. He had never protected a choice. From that night forward, the rules changed. No cages. No marks. No claims. Only protection offered. Never forced. And the city felt it. Something dangerous had evolved. A man who could destroy worlds. Learning how not to. Because the woman who stayed did so on her own terms. Night changed the way truth behaved. In daylight, it hid behind routine. After dark, it pressed closer, demanding to be seen. She felt it when the building went quiet, when even the city seemed to lower its voice. He called her in late. Not urgent. Not official. The room was dim. Only one lamp on. Shadows stretching long across the floor. He did not stand. He sat, elbows resting on his knees. Hands clasped. That alone told her this was different. "You stayed," he said. "I told you I would." A pause. "I need to ask you something. And this time I am not asking as a boss." Her breath slowed. "Go on. Why did you not tell me the truth about the mark?" There it was. The question he had circled for days. The one he feared the answer to. She did not look away. But something behind her eyes closed. "Because once I did, it would stop being mine." His jaw tightened. "Mine to survive." She added quietly. Silence wrapped around them. He leaned back, as if struck, as if understanding too much too quickly. It was not recent. He said, "No, not another man. Not now. No." He nodded slowly, accepting what she was giving, not pushing for what she was not. "Do you know what it did to me?" Seeing it. She hesitated, then answered honestly. "I think you felt powerless." The word landed heavy. "I have never been powerless." He said, "You were afraid." She replied. His eyes lifted to hers. Sharp. Exposed. "Afraid that someone reached me when you were not watching. Afraid that I was alone in your world." That did not need confirmation. It was written across his face. "I do not need you to protect me." She said, "I need you not to own me." He stood then. Slow. Careful. "I have never owned what I cared about." That was the lie. They both knew it. He stopped a step away. "This is different." "Why?" "Because if I owned you, I would cage you. And if I cage you, I become the thing I despise." She felt the weight of that admission. The danger in it. "The mark," he said. "It made me realize something I did not want to see." "What?" "That the thought of losing you terrifies me more than war." The truth settled between them. Unavoidable. Irreversible. She stepped closer. "I am not fragile. I am not innocent. And I am not a prize." "I know," he said. "Then do not save me. Stand with me." He closed his eyes briefly, as if choosing something permanent. "Stand with you." He repeated. "Yes." When he opened his eyes, something ancient and loyal had shifted. "No marks," he said. "Not on you. Not from me. Not from anyone." She believed him, because a man like him did not promise lightly. Outside, the city held its breath. Inside the empire, something new took shape. Not control. Not dominance. Consent. And that was more dangerous than any weapon. The betrayal did not come from outside. It never did. It came from a voice she recognized, a presence that had always been there. Quiet, useful, trusted. She did not know his name. She did not need to. She only knew the sound of it. Low, confident, too calm for the words it carried. She heard it by accident. A turn taken too early. A door not fully closed. The wrong place. The wrong moment. Her name was spoken. Not softly. As currency. She stayed still, breathing slow, letting the shadows keep her hidden. They think she matters to him. The voice said. That makes her valuable. A pause. Then laughter. The kind that came from men who believed they were untouchable. He is distracted. The voice continued. Obsessed. That mark broke his balance. Her blood went cold. The plan unfolded piece by piece. Not loud. Not rushed. If she disappeared. If she was returned damaged. If she was paraded as proof of his weakness. The empire would fracture. She backed away slowly. Every step measured. She did not run. Running made noise. When she reached safety, her hands were steady. Her face calm. But inside something hardened. Across the city he sensed it. Not information. Not warning. Absence. She was late. That never happened. Phones rang. Messages passed. No panic. Only precision. When the truth surfaced, it did so cleanly. Names. Locations. Intent. The betrayal sat at the center of his organization. Close. Familiar. He did not react immediately. He waited. That patience was what saved her. The trap was set carefully. A fake vulnerability. A controlled leak. They believed he was desperate. They believed wrong. When they moved, so did he. She was taken. Briefly. Not by force. By confidence. She allowed it. Because she had already decided. When he arrived, there was no chaos. No shouting. Only silence. Heavy. Final. The traitor tried to speak. Tried to explain. Tried to justify. He listened. All the way through. Then he turned to her. Are you hurt? No. Are you afraid? Not anymore. He nodded. The punishment was quiet. Permanent. Unseen. She never asked what he did. He never told her. What mattered was what he did not do. He did not mark her. Did not lock her away. Did not claim her as weakness. Instead, he dismantled an entire threat. Without letting blood touch her. Later, when the night settled, she stood beside him on the balcony. You knew, she said. I suspected. He replied. Why did you let it continue? Because if I ended it too early, I would never know who stood against you. That honesty carried weight. You trusted me to survive. She said. I trusted you to choose. He answered. Below them, the city continued. Unaware. Above them, something irreversible had happened. She was no longer a vulnerability. She was a line no one would ever cross again. The truth did not arrive gently. It never did. It surfaced the way buried things always did. Through pressure. Through cracks. Through moments when silence could no longer hold. She stood alone in the room where decisions were never meant to be overheard. The walls thick. The air still. She had come looking for him. Instead, she found the past. A voice carried from behind a door. Older. Careful. Weighted with memory. It spoke her name. Not as a threat. As a confession. She stayed where she was. Heart steady. Hands cold. The mark was never about another man. The voice said. It was about survival. Her breath slowed. Every instinct told her not to listen. She listened anyway. Years ago. Before this empire. Before his rule. Before her loyalty was earned. She had been trapped in a deal she did not understand. A transaction made by men who believed women were currency. The mark had been a shield, placed by her own hand. A signal that kept worse things away. She had learned young that sometimes being claimed in rumor was safer than being untouched. The door opened. He stood there, still, silent. He had heard enough. You did that to protect yourself, he said. She did not answer, her eyes finally breaking. I did not want you to know, she whispered, because then you would see me as weak. He stepped closer. Slow. Careful. I see you as alive. That was the moment the obsession changed shape. Not jealousy. Not fear. Understanding. I thought another man marked you. He said. I thought I failed you. You did not. She replied. You arrived after. He closed his eyes briefly. A man confronting the cost of arriving too late. That mark. He said. It was a line you drew. Yes. A line no one crossed. And I crossed it. He said quietly. She shook her head. You did not take anything from me. You asked. The difference mattered. He reached out. Stopped short. May I? She nodded. His fingers brushed her neck. Not claiming. Not possessive. Reverent. No one will ever force you again. He said. Not here. Not anywhere. Not because you belong to me. Because you belong to yourself. Her voice broke. And if the world tries, then it answers to me. Outside, the empire adjusted. Old alliances dissolved. New loyalties formed. Not through blood. Through clarity. The story of the mark changed. It was no longer a weakness. It became a warning. The woman who wore it was not prey. She was precedent. That night, she stood beside him before his inner circle. Not behind. Not hidden. He spoke once. Anyone who looks at her and sees leverage will not live long enough to regret it. No one questioned him. Later, when they were alone, she leaned into him. I never wanted to be the reason you changed. You were never the reason. He said. You were the truth. And for the first time since the mark had existed, it stopped hurting. Because it no longer defined her past. It defined the end of it. Morning returned without asking permission. Soft light across the city. A world pretending nothing had changed. Inside the empire, everything had. She walked beside him now. Not followed. Not guarded. The men who once watched her with calculation lowered their eyes in recognition. Not fear. Respect. No announcement was made. None was needed. Power settled where it belonged. The mark on her neck had faded. Time had done what violence never could. But its absence spoke louder than its presence ever had. Rival families adjusted their positions. Old debts were quietly forgiven. New lines drawn without blood. The woman who once claimed him, as history disappeared from relevance. Not destroyed. Dismissed. That was worse. He stood before his inner circle that night. No throne. No ceremony. Only truth. She stands with me. He said. By choice. Not as property. Not as shield. As equal. The room accepted it without question. Because a man like him did not elevate lightly. Later, they stood alone above the city. Wind carrying distant noise. Life continuing below. You never asked me to stay. She said. I never wanted to trap you. He replied. If you had left, I would have let you. She believed him. And that was everything. You changed the way I rule. He said, I never meant to. She answered, you reminded me why control exists. To protect, not to consume. Silence wrapped around them. Not heavy. Peaceful. She reached for his hand. Not because she needed to. Because she wanted to. Below them, the city learned a new truth. The boss had not grown weaker. He had grown precise. There were no more marks. No rumors. No leverage. Only boundaries enforced with clarity. In time, the story would become legend. Whispered in rooms where men weighed risk. A woman arrived with a mark on her neck. And the empire shifted. Not because of jealousy. Because restraint became power. When the night ended, she rested her head against his chest. His heart beat steady. Certain. This was not an ending. It was alignment. Two survivors choosing the same ground. And for the first time, the empire stood balanced. Not on fear. On loyalty freely given.